you see a creation, there must be a creator. So the evidence for the creator is in the creation. The Bible says in Romans chapter 1, people are willingly ignorant. They don't want to see the creator, and God gives them up to their own crazy beliefs. It'd be tragic if God has given up on you. I hope He hasn't yet. I suggest you read Romans chapter 1 carefully. Okay?
I would just like to try to make what I think is a hugely important point about evidence. I see tons of evidence for creationism. I see 1,000 cases right here in front of me. Birds, atoms, the strong nuclear force. It's all evidence for creation. But I can also explain the origins of things through a theory that I've attempted to explain tonight. So the point here that I think people tend to forget is that a given empirical fact, such as the existence of a marvelously constructed human, can be evidence for two completely opposed things at the same time.
I think the effort should be put into getting lies out of the textbooks. Any textbook that teaches that the embryo has gill slits, the page ought to be torn out. Okay, it's not true. If they teach the whale has a vestigial pelvis, that page ought to be torn out. It's not true. If they teach about the so-called cavemen, whether it be Lucy or, you name it, watch my video number 3 or number 2. I cover all those. Or there's a book called Bones of Contention dealing with the Neanderthals, or Buried Alive about the Neanderthals. Bones of Contention covers all the cavemen. I just simply think textbooks should be accurate. Take the lies out. Don't tell them the embryo has gills. It's not true. They have folds of skin. I got folds of skin in my elbow and behind my knee too. So I can't breathe through them, okay? So I think what's happening is we have about 50 basic lies that are continually put into the textbooks because that's all they have for evidence. It's true there are lobe-finned fish. It's not true that we know they evolved to something else. It's not true. You can believe that if you want, but you just left science and went into fantasy land, which is fine for fantasy textbooks, but it's not fine for science books. So I think what you should do is continually go after, we need to get people with intelligence on the textbook selection committees to select books that don't have these lies. We need to get people writing textbooks that don't have these lies. We need to get people demanding, we need to get some lawyers that love God to sue the schools for allowing lies into the textbooks. California law is very clear. You have to have accurate, up-to-date textbooks. You don't have them in California. Fix it. That would take an hour to answer that question. Yes, there was, but I go with great detail on video number 6 of my series. You can watch it right on my website for free. There are two theories about the Ice Age among Christians. There certainly was an Ice Age. My theory that I propose on video 6 is believed by many millions of people, it's not original with me, is that the Ice Age actually caused the flood. The Earth got hit by an ice meteor, or we went through the tail of a comet. Anyway, a bunch of ice from space got dumped on the poles, which is the only way to explain the rapid freezing of so many animals. It froze so quickly, had to require something colder than naturally occurs on Earth, something around 300 below zero. It doesn't ever get that cold on Earth, and yet we find mammoths frozen with food still in their stomach, still preserved. You can't freeze an animal that big without freezing them real fast, or else the food in the stomach's going to rot. The outside will freeze, inside will rot. So I cover that for an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours on video number 6. You can watch on the website or get on the table out there. Okay?
Okay, if you want one that's a macroevolutionary related mutation that might have actually done some good, let me show you that. Here's the biggie. If we evolved from ape-like creatures, it's believed that about 2 million years ago, a creature that was already walking on 2 legs, that was already bipedal, like Afarensis or Lucy, still had a tiny brain bigger than a chimp. Walking upright, but still a tiny brain. And then for reasons that I've given 3-hour lectures on last year at the college, the brain grew explosively big, very, very fast. So we now have a brain that is 3 times bigger than a chimp. Okay? The question is, how could that have happened through mutations to DNA? All right? So I'm talking about big-time evolution here. I'm talking about as big a thing as you could discuss. How did our brains get here? All right. Boston, in a lab in Boston, there's a group of people who study brain evolution. And they asked the question, can we take a mammal? Now, you can't do these experiments in humans. It's illegal. You'll be thrown in jail. So we have to do them in other mammals. And the easiest ones to do them are in mammals like mice. Someone can try this in a chimp if they want to. I'd have ethical problems, frankly, doing something like this with a chimp. But anyway, the experiment was done in a mouse, which is a mammal, just like us. And they asked, is there any way that we can cause a mouse to have a bigger brain in a single step? Okay? And what they did, for anyone here who's a biology teacher, I'll be technical for a minute. What they did is they took the beta-catenin gene, which codes for a protein that is known to help cells keep re-entering into the cell division cycle, causing things to get bigger. And they had reasons to believe that if they could upregulate the beta-cat gene in the central nervous system, that it might make a bigger brain. So they cloned the beta-cat gene. They inactivated the amino terminus of it so that it would not be degraded, it would stick around longer in the cells. They cloned in front of it an enhancer from the intron 2 of another gene that they knew was expressed in the central nervous system. They put it into a mouse embryo. They grew up the mouse, okay? And here's the results. The next slide. Okay, that's phase space diagram for how they evolved. And the next one. There's the cover picture from Science. This was published in 2002. It made the cover of Science. Next slide. Here's the okay, they're trying to make nerve cells, central nervous system cells keep dividing. The next one, there's the technique that they used, putting this enhancer in front of it to upregulate the beta-cat gene. And here's the slide that you really need to see. Here is a normal mouse brain, and here's the upregulated beta-cat mutant. Okay, this brain was almost twice the mass of a normal mouse brain. Almost twice. And notice something else. Notice that there are no convolutions in a mouse's brain like ours, the sulci and so forth. Notice that this brain spontaneously formed convolutions very similar to a human brain. And that's in a single step mutation.
And the fact that they can do something in the laboratory certainly is not proof that it did happen in nature. So again, you're back to a religious belief, not a scientific statement, okay? And the convolutions, I think, would be normal. See, humans have a section of the brain called Broca's convolution that allows speech. No other animal has that. There are giant steps in our brain. Even arranging them in order wouldn't prove it happened. You could take an animal with a small brain and an animal with a big brain. That proves no relationship. If I get buried on top of a hamster, that does not prove he's my grandpa, okay? So what they're doing is they're doing stuff on paper and imagining how it might have happened. This is not real science. This is imagination. This is fairy tale stuff. So you can play with the genes and cause them out. They do the same thing with polyploidy with vegetables and stuff. You can take strawberries and manipulate the genes, and they double the chromosome number, and you get giant strawberries that taste terrible. Okay? But they're twice the size. That's not new information. It's a doubling of existing information. No different than a cow having 5 legs or something, you know. It's not new information. It's a doubling or expanding of existing information. There are no examples where a naturally occurring mutation has caused an increase in genetic complexity. Richard Dawkins, who refused to debate me from Cambridge University when I was over there a few months ago, Richard Dawkins was asked on TV, he said, can you think of one example of a mutation that has caused an increase in genetic complexity? Evolution would require billions of them. Can you name one, please? He was dead silent for 19 seconds. Finally, he said, shut off the camera, please. There aren't any. There are none. So, had to be designed, my case. Okay? Okay, I don't think I am the issue at all. I think the truth is the issue, and God's Word is the issue, which is basically at stake. I had probably 15 of Dr. Rainbow's students come to tell me that he spends his entire class pushing the evolution theory and really gives creationists or Christians a hard time. So he's using tax dollars to do that. So I guess I feel like I'm defending truth. I'm not defending me. If I came across as prideful, I'm sorry. I'm not. I'm just a lowly high school science teacher that's sick and tired of his tax dollars being used to destroy the faith of kids. That's all.
Ernest Haeckel falsified and was proven to have falsified certain drawings of embryos. And the fact that, okay, let me show a slide. At the top, that's what the phylotypic stage of vertebrate embryos actually look like. And Dr. Hovind showed an excellent slide of it with actual photographs. They are different at the top there, but notice also how similar they are. And the next slide, that is a human embryo. And here you see the long, here's the hind leg developing what us evolutionists would call a very long fish-like tail, just like the fish embryo has. And then here we see the subject of our discussion tonight. These are called pharyngeal gill clefts. And these form in a fish, just like this, and they also form in a human. So the take-home message from the theory of evolution is that evolutionary theory predicts very powerfully that organisms would have to some degree, recapitulate in their embryology what happened in evolution. And I have a 45-minute lecture that I actually gave this very day in my class on vertebrate Evo Devo, in which I show how this is very no, they're not gill slits. These are not gill slits, and Dr. Hovind is totally correct in trying to rip that stupid statement out of the textbooks. It's totally deceiving to say that a human embryo has gill slits. We don't. We have the remains of one, which is your eustachian tube. It still goes from the outside to the inside of your throat. We have the remains of one. But we do have pharyngeal gill clefts just like a fish does. And it would take me a long time to demonstrate it, but it's evidence for evolution. It's exactly the kind of thing we would expect to see if the theory is true, and we see it.
I think if from a design perspective, as the baby develops inside the mother, it's very important that the nervous system develop first and the circulatory system develop first. The hind legs are unnecessary for the first few months of development. He's not going to go anywhere. Okay? So if you'll notice, where the hind legs are going to be growing, this is not a tail. These 5 or sometimes 6 little bones become the tail bone, the coccyx. The next 5 or 6 up become the lumbar. Some people have 5, some have 6. Most have 5 fused together for the lumbar. And that's exactly the right position where they are. So what you see happening here is the backbone and the central nervous system is developing first, which is the logical way it has to develop. It starts with the brain. It has to end someplace. It ends at the end of the tail. My wife bruised her tailbone 4 years ago and is still in pain today, every day. We've tried everything to get that fixed. So the tailbone is essential. The nervous system has to end someplace. And it starts out, this is a developmental sequence, okay? Back up one slide if you could there for me. Notice this is a drawing. This is not a picture. This is a drawing, okay? These drawings are fake. If you turn my projectors on here, I again stand by the actual photographs.
Yeah, great.
These are the drawings Haeckel made. These are the photographs. He's still trying to teach this is evidence. It's not, okay? It's just simply not true. Take it out of the book, okay? Thank you.
Do I see myself as a sinner before holy God? And what do I think will happen if I die? On those days when I believe in God, which is about half the time, I have no fear whatsoever of facing Him, because I believe that I do a reasonably good job of trying. Here's my philosophy of life. My kids. I believe that the only thing that you need to do in life, and if there is a God, the only thing that He cares about us doing ultimately, is to enjoy nature and love people.